Hello there, runDisneyers. It's Manny again, and as promised, I am going to do my recap video for the Disneyland Half Marathon. Just came back a couple of days ago. Wanted to collect my thoughts, jot down some notes, actually look at the webpage because I needed to go over a few things just to make sure I give you the right information. So I'm going to get into it shortly, but before we do, if you have not already, please subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 1,500 subscribers. This is great. A year ago, I didn't think we would get to 1,000. We got to 1,000. We'll keep growing. Thank you. It's your channel. It's thanks to you guys. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm going to go ahead and give you some more credit in a little bit, but let's get to it. So first off, I'm going to go over every aspect of what just happened, what transpired, the Expo 5K, 10K, half, and then I'm going to go over, as usual, the great, the good, and then the what needs to be worked on. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the Expo. So the Expo to me was brand spanking new, and let me explain. This is my first Expo at Disneyland doing the Club Run Disney, and there was a double whammy because the Expo itself, when we go into the merchandise booth, the Expo itself is right there. So if you noticed, I got to record and there was hardly anybody around the Expo itself, the vendors, that kind of stuff. And then I went upstairs, got later on, got my bib, went back, and it still wasn't a lot of people in line. So my perspective was actually really good. I was able to get merchandise. I didn't buy a lot. So I got to talk to some of the vendors. It was real cool because there was stuff that I overlooked, including discounts on certain products during that day if you were there. So that was a good thing about the Expo. But again, I walked around. I was able to record pretty well. And as a matter of fact, it was towards the end. I was still there and there was hardly anybody there, and I got to record. Now, I don't know the perspective afterward. Now, I did go back to the Expo all 3 days. And of course, the last day there was hardly anybody there. I was just walking in, doing my stuff. The day before was not that bad either. It didn't seem that bad either. So that was the perspective that I got. But again, I left as soon as I finished on Thursday. I went back to my room so I could edit the video so you guys could see everything. And I actually stayed a little longer there talking to people, so that's what took me a little bit longer. And I didn't have the proper Wi-Fi at my resort, so that's what took it a little bit longer. But if I would have had a really good Wi-Fi, that thing would have been up probably by noon. So now let's go to the 5K. And the 5K, we start in front of Sleeping Beauty's castle at the Disneyland park. We run around the parks, run outside a little bit, but it's not outside of the parks. It's still in Disney property. We come around and we go into DCA. We ran into Avengers Campus, and then we finished off at Pixar Pier, where if you watch the video, there's a cheer section, so people, if you have family or friends that are coming, they can actually come in. So it's through Downtown Disney. They come in, there's a place where they can come in and cheer you on. But we got to see a lot of it. There was a few characters on the course. I want to say there was 3 or 4 on the course, so you could stop and take pictures with them. There were long lines, but it was pretty cool. It was cold that morning, and I was actually the last one to start. So it was funny that I mean, I've got to pass up people, but by the time I get to the characters, the lines are so long that I just basically did not stop. The only one I stopped and considered was Groot, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. But let's move on to the 10K. So to me, the 10K is the coolest run at Disneyland, and maybe even overall, because we do run a mile outside. We start at Disney Way. We run outside. We run by Pixar Place Hotel, the new theming of the hotel. Then we go in about mile marker 1, and then we do run in Disney property from there on out until we exit about mile marker 5 plus. We exit and we go back to Disney Way, and we finish inside the parking lot. So, but most of the run, a good portion of the run, is in the parks, and so we get to see a lot of the parks. Again, a couple more characters that day. It was still cold, but it still was really cool. I did do the dead last start, so I got to see the balloon ladies. Basically the first time seeing them because I did not understand what I was looking for. I was looking for balloons last year, but they were actually carrying umbrellas. So it's a little bit different. The biggest change is that they actually wait for us to come out, and we're the last ones, and then they just come in from the side. So it's not like in Disney World where they come in with us. There's a huge parking lot, so they come in with us. So that was the most interesting part. But let's go on to the half marathon. So I'm going to say this about the half marathon. It is what it is. We only run about 3 miles inside of the park. So the first mile is outside going in. Then once we get inside Disney property, it's about 3 miles in there. And then the next 9 miles are outside of the parks. So we don't get to run a lot inside the parks. It is what it is. So you got to go in there understanding that you're not going to see characters outside of there. They did have some music. They did have some entertainment here and there. My favorite is to bring back Star Wars guys. And I even told them, I said, they're inching up because to me, they're Disneyland celebrities, especially when they're out there and they're dressed up. So I think they were excited to hear that. But besides that, it was actually nice. The weather was very, very nice. Once we got outside the parks, it was really, really good. People were spread out, so it wasn't as bad. I did not see any injuries. I saw the aftermath of people falling. I never saw anybody fall myself, but I did see the aftermath of people falling. It didn't look like a lot, and I hope to God it isn't a lot. I kept telling the paramedics, the medical people, I kept telling them, I hope to God that you're not very popular today. You're not very busy today, and I hope that's true. But now we're going to move on and we're going to talk about what needs to be worked on. So the first thing is the reason I said earlier that I needed to look at the website a little bit closer because, and I said about the 5K that I stopped taking a picture and I left. Well, it's all put together. So when we got into California Adventure, I got into Avengers Campus. So I ran in there and I saw Groot. Groot is a cool character and you get the magic shots with him, but for him to be there was a little bit different. So I went all the way back because there was a long, long line, and then I wasn't sure if he was going to be switching off. And so anyway, somebody came in and said that we could be swept very, very soon. And I kept thinking to myself, this sweeping with an untimed race doesn't go together. Somebody pointed out later on that it does say on the website that it's a 16-minute per mile pace. So I had to go and look, and sure enough, the official rules, even with the 5K, are 16-minute per mile pace. Now, again, this is kind of new to me because, especially at Disney World, they're untimed. They're untimed at Disneyland too. There is no chip on your bib. There is no timer, so you don't cross any paths and say, okay, we start, like for the half marathon, if you don't pass those markers, it's going to give you a did not finish. You're not going to be officially run. But it doesn't do that for the 5K, so it kind of threw me for, a loop. I wasn't sure, and then I ended up not taking the picture with Groot because I said, well, I'm not gonna take a chance, and so I'll deal with this later. So that was one thing that I think that they got to work on the wording, because I completely understand, because it's not like Disney World. They push back at Disney World the openings of parks, and they even accommodate both people being there and so the people that are getting to the parks and the runners, they kind of accommodate that, especially at Epcot. But at Disneyland, it's a little bit different. So the parks open up roughly when we finish about an hour afterward, and then there's still people that are trickling in. What I think that Disney should do is do one of a couple of things. Number one is one of the options is just make it a timed race. So put a chip on there and make sure that it's 16-minute per mile pace, so that they understand that if they don't do that 16-minute per mile pace, which would be a little bit about 50 minutes, if they don't finish it within 50 minutes, then they're not going to get swept. And so that's one way of doing it. I think the best way of doing it, though, is to actually say, hey, if you don't finish by 7 o'clock, we do have to open up the park by 8. So if you don't finish by 7 o'clock, you can, it's a possibility you can get swept. To word it to a certain way, we're saying that they have to be finished by 1 hour before the park opens. So that way there's an understanding there, because that's kind of a lack of communication. And so expectations are that since it's untimed, and that's the way it is at Disney World, we can just take our time. And that is not the case. And now I see it. But a lot of it has to do with wording of it, because they did actually close Avengers Campus. I had already passed, but they closed it, and they were telling people it's because we have to open up the park soon. And so again, it makes sense. I can understand both sides, but the problem is the wording is not there. And so people are, even I was not understanding 100%, and I've done these a million years. I've been there for 17 years actually doing them, and so I had to go back and look. And by the letter of the law, yes, it does say 60-minute pace. And Disney has something that people just do not understand. They never read, but again, I read it, and they can basically change the rules whenever they want to. They don't do that on a regular basis because it would not be a very popular decision. But you got to remember that they can change the rules whenever they want to. This is the first race they were really enforcing it. What I suggest again last time is that you just word it when they sign up, so that way people will understand that. And I think the perfect compromise is going to be that they're going to have to close the course 1 hour before the park opens. That way people have the expectation that they got to be at Pixar Pier by 7, and maybe even out by 7:30 or something to that effect, so that way they understand. But it was funny because once I got to Pixar Pier and I hung out, I was doing a couple of things. I stayed there for quite a while. I was there for quite a while, and I even recorded afterward a little bit. But that's something that Disney, I think, has to work on. The second thing that Disney has to work on a little bit is the cast members' wording. Most cast members are fantastic. I ran into a whole bunch of them. I befriended a whole bunch of them, and they're fantastic. They're great. But a couple of times I was listening to people talk, and one time even I got in to take a picture, and the wording that the cast members did scared a lot of the runners. Now, I'm going to give you the scenario because this is the actual scenario. At the 10K, like I said, I started at the very end. So I got to see the balloon ladies come out, and I was at the very, very end. So I started running. I ran down Disney Way. When I turned onto Catella, I was looking at my watch, and I was looking at them. They hadn't started yet, so they started about a minute after I did. A minute after I did. Then I ran onto Catella, went into the parks, ran, and then I hit mile marker 1, and it was about 13:30, give or take, whatever it was, give or take 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. So by the time I got to mile marker 5, I knew for a fact that I was at least 10 minutes in front of the balloon ladies. So I got to mile marker 5. After that, we were going to be taking a picture. It was a picture with some Star Wars scooters, and I was looking at getting in there. The line wasn't long. The reason I did not take the picture there is because it's one of those, they didn't have a photo pass person there. You had to take your own photo. But a guy got in there, a cast member came out and basically said that the balloon ladies were on their way, and if they caught us, it would finish your run. And that's the way he said it. It was going to finish your run. And so I sat there going like, oh, and then I turned to the people in front of me because one of them took off booking it real quick, and there was a couple of ladies and they looked scared, and I said, no, you're fine. And he goes, how do you know? And then I told them the scenario, and they were like, he's scaring us. And then I went back, and that's why I went back on that Saturday, and I actually talked to Disney, and I said, this is not right. Please do not scare the runners. They're already scared. They're already on edge. If you read social media, they're already edgy. So what you're doing is you're making their experiences they're even worse. And you don't have to make it even bad for them. And I don't think it should be bad, but when you're threatening them, when you're scaring them like that, then all of a sudden they're going to go to the next level. And I really think that Disney, it's going to be really, really easy. Reword it. Instead of saying, hey, the balloon ladies are on their way. We want to make sure that you finish in front of them. That way, you can have an enjoyable run. You can pick up your medal and stuff, but just be aware that we are tracking them and they are getting closer. If you happen to know the time, which they do at Disney World, if you say, hey, they're 2 minutes behind you, that kind of stuff, that would be perfect. But this kind of wording did not go. It scared people, and that is something that I really firmly believe Disney's got to work on. And again, it wasn't just one. I got to hear it quite a few times. So this is something they got to work on. What I was highly impressed with, by the time it got to the half marathon, it seemed like a lot of that, I didn't hear it anymore. And I don't know if I had something to do with it when I talked to them, or they just fixed it up themselves, whatever it was. I'm glad that they did it because people were now more enjoying the runs. And so that's that. And that is basically what Disney's got to work on. The one thing we have to work on, especially in the shorter races, is just better etiquette. And a lot of people are new to it, so they get excited and they move on. You got to remember, walkers to the right, joggers to the left. If you're kind of a tweener, you kind of go in between, but do not just stop. That was another thing. People just stopped and they didn't even raise their hand. Or even if you raise your hand after you stop, it's still not the right thing to do. So just make sure that you're running etiquette. Make sure that you understand, especially us, the people who have been doing it for a while, us veterans, we have to understand and we have to help them out saying, hey, just stay to the, right, you're walking and stuff. Once you start jogging or you're going to start jogging, go move over to the left. I hope I do a good job. If not, please feel free to call me out. But anyway, so that's the thing that we got to work on as a whole. By the last day, it seemed like, again, a lot of it's fixed up, but it was, again, there was a lot more separation, and so it seemed to be well. But again, the 5K and the 10K, there was some hiccups here and there, and that is something that we, as the Run Disney community, not the cast members, not the race directors, not anybody who's out there, that is something we have to work on as a whole, so that way we can help each other. I actually got hit. That was one of the first times. I have gotten hit before in the past, but I rarely gotten hit. But somebody passed by me, and basically when they run, they punched me on my left shoulder. And so if you didn't see it in the video, it's because it was edited out. So that's it. So the last thing I want to talk about with things that they got to work on, but it's not a big priority because I understand what Disneyland did. I wish they would have just done it a little bit differently. Maybe, again, wording of it. Character stops. They had fewer character stops than before, but they actually, when you look at it, it was actually the same. A lot of the characters were up on top, like Avengers Campus, they were up on top. And they had different characters, and they had sometimes 3 of them just wandering off. And so, but it's a different character stop because you can't just go in there and take a picture. You're going to have to take a selfie, and they're going to be up there. Same thing in Galaxy's Edge. You had Star Wars characters, so that was that. So that's something that they can word better, but I understand it because it helps. It can help, depending on the runs. It can help with congestion, and they could put people out there. They could put more characters out there more. Like they even put Captain Jack Sparrow at Pirates of the Caribbean. So that's another one that they did. And they actually had a couple of scenes in the back that you could run into. So that was actually a cool part too. But again, worded saying we're gonna have a mixture of characters where you can do run bys and some scenes that you can get into. But overall, when you look at it, it was basically the same number that they've had, maybe even more, but people were getting mad, and I could see their point because they're thinking that you're going to run and get into a character line, and that's the thing. So again, it's wording of. And that's it. Let's move on to the good. So I'm going to start off with the Star Wars guys. I actually think that they were really, really cool. Now I'm used to seeing them as a third run, bring back Star Wars. It's something that and this is a mental thing because again, when you're running a half marathon, and I was talking to somebody earlier in the corrals who was doing their first one, I said, just look at the next thing that's coming up and focus on what's coming up. And that's one of the things that I was focusing on. I was like, where are the Star Wars guys? Where are the Star Wars guys? And so when I finally got to them, it was really, really cool. I think I had already run a few miles. So and I had to run a couple miles before I saw them, a few miles once I was out. And it's really, really cool, but it helps out. And I love the Star Wars guy because they have this attitude. It's not like a it's not a forceful attitude, but it is an attitude that they have that's kind of like, hey, let's just bring it back. And I think it's really cool. And we had the Ahsoka Tano 10K, which was great. I took some great pictures with that. But that's where I'm going to start with my good. The next thing I'm going to talk about that was good was the courses. I really do. The 10K at Disneyland is very slowly becoming my favorite run because they get to run a lot in there. So that's the cool part about it. So now I'm going to get to the great, and the great is you guys. I mean, I just get thinking to myself, I am so lucky to be around, and I'm going to go over things that I saw, people that I met. I met a whole bunch of characters. I was around villains. I was with a living legacy legend, an Olympian, first timers, multi-timers. I actually got to meet and actually run with a walking miracle, and that is a true story. It was really, really cool. And I'm gonna call one out by name. Alan Young is such a modest guy. He is a perfect marathoner at Disney World. He's a perfect half marathoner at Disneyland, plus did the only marathon that there was at Disneyland. Now here goes the cream of the crop for Alan. He is a perfect person. He is just this great person. When you're around him, you can't just, you just smile. He's such a great person. Him and his wife are awesome to be around. I am blessed that I get to hang around with them even for short periods of time. It is just so awesome to be around. I just think to myself, if I can just take 10% of what you guys got, this is great. But this is just one example. You know, Alan is young. Love you, Alan. But there's so many of you that I met, and it's just so great to be around you guys, hang out with some of you guys. Again, and I'm gonna go through the whole thing. I've met people and hung around with them at the airport, on the plane, on the cab ride to the hotels, in the parks, at the expos, before the run, during the run, after the run, afterward getting into the parks and posing for pictures. This is the greatest thing, and I feel as the luckiest man alive to be able to do this kind of stuff with you guys. And I want to continue doing that. We got Princess in a few weeks, and so we're gonna have videos on that too. But I can go on and on and on, and there was so many of you that I didn't name my names, but you know who you are. You are fantastic. You're great. You're magical. Again, just like my friend Alan, you're a perfect person, and it just is so cool to be around you. And again, I'm gonna stop now because again, I can rant on for about another hour, and this is not. This is a video for the recap, but this was my favorite part overall. I just thought it was, you guys are magical, and that was my favorite part of the weekend, just interacting with each and every one of you. Even if it was a short few seconds, it made my weekend just awesome. So that's it for this video. I am going to do a video for registration because we just started registration for the Perfect Status and for the Club Run Disney just yesterday. And so in the next couple of days, I'm going to make my tips and tricks for registration, so that way, if you haven't already, and I talked to a lot of you guys who haven't been able to get into some Disney runs, and yes, I'm going to hope that you get in this time. As a matter of fact, I got something special, something different in this next video that I haven't had before, so make sure that you keep your eyes out for that one. And if you know, once you see it and you feel like it can help people out, please direct them to the video, so that way they have the best chance of getting into the Disney runs and they can share this magic with all of us out there. But without further ado, I just wanted to thank you for your time. Thank you. And without further ado, create a magical day, create a magical run, and guys, see you sooner than later.